Welcome back, preventers. This is going to be my presentation on vitamin K2 and the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. This will be the first part, but then I'll film the presentation as one video when all the parts are done. Most of the information from this presentation is provided by this paper, which was published in Nutrients, and in addition, it also has me synthesizing information and providing context using my knowledge. So when the presentation is fully finished, I'll include learning objectives at this time. But for now, let's just go over an overview of what Alzheimer's disease is and then an overview of this paper. So to begin with, Alzheimer's disease really is a chronic neurodegenerative disease. This means that it is something that stays with you long term and leads to the continued degeneration of your neurons. Neurons are basically your brain cells, and it truly is a terrifying disease. I'm sure that a lot of people know someone that has had it. Now, it usually happens after the age of 65, and it doubles in prevalence every 5 years after that. So, for example, someone that is 70, they would have someone that is 70, there would be 2 times as many people that have it than at age 65, and 4 times as many that would have it at age 75 than 65. Now, with Alzheimer's disease, the clinical symptoms are really problems with memory, being less organized, less ability to multitask, and even frighteningly, the less ability to recognize that there is something wrong going on inside yourself. So, with Alzheimer's disease, in later stages of this disease, some people develop BPSD, which is known as behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia. These symptoms lead to disinhibition, agitation, and kind of psychosis. So this also puts them at increased risk of mental health issues such as depression, and this ultimately leads to increased apathy, social disengagement, irritability, aggression, and wandering. Alzheimer's disease is truly a terrifying condition. So let's go over some of the epidemiology and how has this happened over the time. So over the last recent years, the incidence of Alzheimer's disease has risen, and it is one of the leading causes of chronic disability and death. While not all dementia is Alzheimer's, it is the most common type of dementia. It leads to drastic physical, emotional, and financial consequences for both those affected and their families. Right now, there is no treatment to cure or slow down this progression, but its progression can be slowed down with activities such as keeping the brain active, keeping your diabetes under control, and getting exercise. These are all activities that you have heard from the media before. Now, the current theory of the mechanism of Alzheimer's disease right now is one consisting of beta amyloid in the brain and the accumulation of tau protein tangles in neurons. Think of this as gunk in the brain that accumulates. And associated genes have also been implicated to increase risk, such as the APOE gene. Now, there are multiple risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, brain injury, sleep problems, poor diet, lack of exercise, and of course, aging. Now, these are the same as the ones I mentioned before, but if you don't have enough of something to prevent progression, it starts to become a risk factor. So, now that that's said, what are the proposed mechanisms from this paper? So, the proposed mechanisms from this paper say that really Alzheimer's disease is really brought upon by 6 mechanisms. So, these mechanisms that the researchers postulate that Alzheimer's disease comes about by is apoptosis. So that's the first mechanism. Think of apoptosis as kind of the suicide of the cell. Now, it is normally the body's way of killing off cells that it no longer needs. And usually this is in the context for killing off old cells and making new cells. You're getting rid of the old and making way for the new. However, cells in the brain are very slow to make new cells. So the second mechanism that this occurs by is by oxidative stress and damage. Oxidative damage is really the byproducts of metabolism that are hard for the body to process, and this leads to damage. Now, the third mechanism is neuroinflammation. Neuroinflammation is inflammation in the brain and the spinal cord. Those are really our central nervous system, where most of the important functions of the nervous system happen. So, the fourth mechanism is mitochondrial dysfunction. I'm sure that you heard of mitochondria before. It's really known as the powerhouse of the cell, and for good reason, because it supplies energy to our whole body. Those with mitochondrial dysfunction, those mitochondria don't perform as well as they need to. So next is vascular disease, the mechanism number 5, and this really occurs to damage to your blood vessels that leads you to increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. And the sixth mechanism is microbiome changes. The microbiome is really the bacterial landscape located inside our gut. So these are the 6 different ways that basically lead to progression of Alzheimer's disease, or is postulated to. So how can vitamin K2 impact this? So the researchers have provided evidence of how vitamin K2 can impact these mechanisms in a positive way and hopefully prevent or slow down the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. There are a total of 7 mechanisms. So let's go through each one. I'll cover these more in detail later on, but think of this right now as kind of an overview. First and secondly, vitamin K2 prevents A beta induced apoptosis and oxidation over here. These two. Remember the gunk that I mentioned before? The gunk in your brain is really the beta amyloid, think of it like that. And it results in the death of neurons, also known as brain cells, by promoting apoptosis. Which apoptosis, as I said before, think of it like the suicide of the cell. Furthermore, the antioxidative properties of it allows it to control inflammation. So, this also decreases neuroinflammation because the accumulation of this beta amyloid, this gunk, as I mentioned before, can lead to the activation of glial cells. Glial cells are really the support cells in the brain, and the activation of these glial cells leads to neuroinflammation, which is inflammation inside the brain. So, this vitamin K2 decreases the inflammation by calming down the inflammatory response, and it also does this by activating another protein which is known as Gas6. In my previous video, I mentioned that vitamin K2 can activate 2 proteins, matrix-GL1 alpha protein, but also osteocalcin. In this video, I'm also mentioning that there's another protein that vitamin K2 activates, which is known as Gas6. So this is furthermore also supported by evidence that the researchers found that when they gave an anesthetic to mice brain cells, vitamin K2 treatment helped to restore some of the deficits, suggesting its role in the protection of brain cells. So fourth, vitamin K2 also helps to improve energy production. So it also helps to improve energy production with the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell and what provide energy to our whole body. It also helps to reduce reactive oxygen species, the negative byproducts of metabolism that are hard for the body to process. So you can kind of see that all of them are interplay with one another. Fifth, it also improves vascular health. So as I mentioned before in my previous video, vitamin K2 helps to activate matrix-GL1 alpha protein, but also osteocalcin, and reduces calcification and keeps the arteries clean. So this calcification of the arteries leads to stiffening of the arteries, which increases the risk of dementia. Sixth, the microbiome. In gut dysfunction, it is found that the disruption of the microbiome reduces the ability of the gut to make vitamin K2. So the researchers also looked at the ability to make K2 in the gut and found that it was associated with increased cognitive ability if the gut was actually able to make vitamin K2. Seventh, in Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis, they have lower vitamin K2 levels than in those of healthy people. So this is just kind of an overview. I'll go into each one in detail later on. But for now, I'll just give you a quick explanation of vitamin K2. If you kind of want to see that covered in detail in another video, you can watch my vitamin K2, the mysterious link video, where I cover that in detail, or you can click here. So, there are three best known forms of vitamin K. There is vitamin K1, vitamin K2 is MK4, and vitamin K2 is MK7. So, the vitamin K1 is really present in green leafy vegetables, avocado, and vegetable oil. And if you look at the chemical structure over here, it really doesn't have a lot of double bonds. MK4 is really obtained through the conversion from vitamin K1, and it is found in meat and eggs. And if you look at here, it has 4 double bonds, indicating that the 4 in MK4 to indicate that it has 4 double bonds. And MK7 is synthesized by bacteria during fermentation, and it is found in fermented foods like kimchi and cheese and natto. But as I mentioned in my previous video, the concentration of MK7 found in natto is about 100 times higher than anything else. So MK4 and MK7 are once again differentiated by their double bonds that they have in their tails. MK4 has 4 double bonds and MK7 has 7. More double bonds means a longer tail. Interestingly enough, currently the government has not set any recommended consumption of vitamin K2 because they do not recognize it. All recommended intakes of vitamin K are based off of vitamin K1. Again, for further information, check out my video on vitamin K2, the mysterious link. So, vitamin K1, vitamin K2 is MK4, and vitamin K2 is MK7 are the most researched and popular forms of vitamin K2, but there also do exist others. They can be grouped into 3 categories: short chain, intermediate chains, and long chains. Short chains exist as MK4 to MK6. The number indicates how many double bonds it has. Remember MK4 with the 4 double bonds and MK7 with the 7 double bonds? So intermediate chains exist as MK7 to MK9, and long chains as MK10 to MK13. So as mentioned before, MK7 is the form most studied because it is the form that gives you the best bang for your buck to increase blood levels of vitamin K2. So this is going to be the end of my first part, and I'll go into each one, each mechanism in detail in a further video, and then also discuss the results, and then I'll upload the full video later on. So this is just going to be an in progress, and then I'll upload the final presentation with the learning objectives. Thank you for listening.